Welcome to Last Sunday Poetry Reading and Open Mic. This is an event presented by the Writers Guild at Bloomington. I'm Patsy Ron, and I'll be your host today. And today we have featured poets Antonia Matthew and Anna Petro. And we're thrilled to have an intergenerational reading today. This is something we haven't done before. And so for this program, they will each read for about 7 minutes, and then they will take turns reading back and forth poems that are on the same theme. And then following our featured poets, we will have an open mic with members of our audience today. And thank you everyone for coming and being a part of this. Oh, at the end of the event, in the closing credits, we will provide the biographies of the guest readers, as well as a list of our open mic readers in case you're interested in following up on their work. And now I'd like to introduce our featured readers. So Antonia Matthew is from England, where she grew up during World War II. She has lived in Bloomington since 1968 and has been a member of the writing group 5 Women Poets since 1974. She credits the group with keeping her writing. She has published a chapbook titled Journey and written a play titled Homefront. She is a member of the Writers Guild at Bloomington. And Anna Petro is 12 years old, and she lives in Bloomington, Indiana with her parents, her brother, her 2 dogs, her brother's ball python, and her rescue snails. And she loves to write. So, Tonya, I think you're going to start off.
Thank you, Patsy. I'm going to start with a poem set in France. It was painted in 1875 by Gustave Thiebaud, and it's set near the village of Hyères. And the title is Effect of Rain. If you love a painting, if you sit with it, tears in your eyes, grateful it is here, it will begin to show it yourself in small ways, so that you sense the muddy path along the riverbank, the cracked wooden beams shoring it up, is inviting you to stand there, watching the rain make circles on the water, to be calmed by the greenery and the view through the trees on the opposite bank. Glimpse of meadow, long grass curving under the rain, and at the top of the slope, a suggestion of houses. And you see, someone is rowing a boat that was hidden by tall grasses across the river to take you home. I love going out and looking for the moon, and this poem is about that. Our alien planet. 6 a.m., out on the still street, collecting the newspaper, I look for the waning moon. Having seen it rising in the southeast through the mulberry trees at 2 a.m., I know it'll be somewhere in the dawn sky. A crow flaps over me, caws once, disappears through the neighbor's pine, and there, between the slanting branches, lopsided, like an alien planet straying into our world, it shines, a smudged whiteness. Always it's this way. The waning moon setting wears a strangeness. And for this poem, we're going to move to England. It's set on a beach in England just after World War II. Shells on the beach. After the war, we started going to the beach again. The scaffolding along the low tide line, erected when the invasion seemed imminent to trap the army's landcraft, was gone. But the ships sunk in the channel could not be recovered, so lumps of oil from the wreckages continued to wash ashore. My mother and I walked through the sand at the foot of the cliffs, seeking for cowrie shells, my mother's favorite. She would exclaim, smile at me, as I, wanting those rare smiles, eager to please, would hand her one, having sifted the sand over and over through my fingers, seeking for those shells' smooth roundness, fan-shaped markings, and the opening that smiled or frowned, depending on how you held it. Now, I think for her, the finding, the keeping, held back for a moment, grief at my father's death. These are 2 poems, each one is about a piece of music. Opus 25, Etudes of Chopin. Later than forecast, as if the etudes had shaken it loose, there was snow falling outside as I left the concert hall. Unlike the forceful notes of the piano drenching me in sound, the flakes fell softly, muffling everything. Soft pedal held down. Schumann's Sonata No. 1, aria in F sharp minor. A pianist in her room alone plays with the window open. Notes drift through the pale sunlight over a window box of violets, down into the quiet, empty street. The sorrowful heart is speaking, yet, listening, I am strangely comforted. And I want to finish with a poem about the trouble we've been having in our neighborhood. It's called Defenseless. One of the camels in my backyard sits on the bird feeder. They are eating the poke down to the ground. The bunches of small purple berries, the droopy leaves, the red-striped woody stems. At this rate, my yard will become yellow-brown, like our blue-green planet, the only green remaining on mountaintops among the snowmelt, and I have an awful fear of heights. The yard becomes full of dung. The stench hangs in the humid air. Soon, only the hemlock trees will remain. The camels, hungry, bellow all night, disturb the neighborhood, and I drink too much coffee, become dizzy, unable to answer coherently the neighbors' phone calls. The camels break out, trample back decks and privacy fences, consume chrysanthemums, ground cover, dogwoods, and rose bushes, then move on. We all stand in the street, survey the disaster area. No one has camel insurance. Thank you. And now I'm delighted to introduce our next featured reader, Anna Petro. Anna.
Hello. Thank you. Those were all amazing, by the way, Antonia. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Patsy for inviting me to be a guest speaker along with Tonia. I'm going to start off by reading 2 poems by other poets and then 3 of my own. This first poem was actually part of my English and Language Arts class. It really stuck out to me, so I decided to share it with you. Life doesn't frighten me at all, Maya Angelou. Shadows on the wall, noises down the hall, life doesn't frighten me at all. Bad dogs barking loud, big ghosts in a cloud, life doesn't frighten me at all. Mean old Mother Goose, lions on the loose, they don't frighten me at all. Dragons breathing flame on my counterpane, that doesn't frighten me at all. I go boo, make them shoo, I make fun, way they run. I won't cry, so they fly, I just smile, they go wild. Life doesn't frighten me at all. Tough guys fight, all alone at night, life doesn't frighten me at all. Panthers in the park, strangers in the dark, no, they don't frighten me at all. That new classroom where boys all pull my hair, Kissy little girls with their hair in curls. They don't frighten me at all. Don't show me frogs and snakes and listen for my scream. If I'm afraid at all, it's only in my dreams. I've got a magic charm that I keep up my sleeve. I can walk the ocean floor and never have to breathe. Life doesn't frighten me at all. Not at all. Not at all. Life doesn't frighten me at all. This next poem is from a book by E. E. Cummings that I borrowed from Patsy. Unfortunately, I could not find a name for it, so I'm just going to call it Untitled. Humanity, I love you, because you would rather black the boots of success than inquire whose soul dangles from his watch chain, which would be embarrassing for both parties, and because you unflinchingly applaud all songs containing the words country home and mother when sung at the old Howard. Humanity, I love you, because you, when you're hard up, you pawn your intelligence to buy a drink, and when you're flush, pride keeps you from the pawn shop, and because you're continually committing nuisances, but more especially in your own house. Humanity, I love you, because you are perpetually putting the secret of life in your pants and forgetting it's there and sitting down on it. And because you are forever making poems in the lap of death humanity, I hate you. E. E. Cummings. Yeah, I thought that one was just nice and witty. The next poem I'm reading is one that I wrote. Occasionally, I'll just full on ugly sob like once a month, so this is kind of about that. The Cowardly Wall. As I run up the mountain to rushing salt streams, trees and birds around me, small butterflies ascending, yet suddenly they stopped. A stone. In my way. Stone upon stone. The fragments of earth, stacked tall, too high for even me, on the tip of my tippy toes to look over. The strong gate keeping it back. It was never specified, though I believed it was more of a synonym. It might have been emotion, possibly innovation, though that is irrelevant. As water seeps through the seams of the cold stone, it turns soggy. I hate sog. Sogginess, is one of the worst things out there. Who would even come up with that word? Sog sounds rotten. This nauseating feeling just angered me more. Putting both index fingers against the stone structure, I then realized it was no gate. Gates let things through, walls keep them back. A boiling anger inside me starts to emerge. Why? Why would anyone be such a coward to the point where they pretend to be a gate when they're indeed a wall? Stones fall, more and more. I'm surrounded by them. For a moment, the small comets around me appear to be feather-like petals. Yet with one blink, these delicate petals turn to plunging rubble rock, the wall. The wall which had fallen. How, I do not know, but I rejoice, for it, from earlier, is now flowing, streaming down the surface of my flushed red eyes, streaming down rolling hills of skin and bone. For that moment, I am free. So yeah, that's that poem. The introduction to this next poem is really within the first few stanzas. Lines of the world. Cranberries have always been a favorite of mine. Yet in my family, we only eat them once a year in a holiday based around some bond, a bond that isn't palpable. You can't hear it, you can't see it, yet it is everywhere. If you were an astronaut high in the sky, a special astronaut indeed, for you are the only one who can see this bond. You look down on the earth, which is a ball of yarn through your eyes, that is. The colors vary. Lines of green in perfect tautness, lines of red in tug of war, and lines of blue in a saggy line. Lines of purple appear to be perfectly stretched, yet they are truly a mix of blue and red, sometimes taut, sometimes not. Only one side is tugging when it comes to purple. Purple has many variations. All are troublesome, perplexing, and problematic, and never will our astronaut fully understand for envy is the most complicated of them all. All right, and then finally, my last poem, which is a satire about equality. Swipes and strokes. On rough canvas, the world is yours. Whether you decide to use turquoise or magenta, rose or honey, war or blood, it is all the same beautiful creation in the eyes of the canvas. It is all the same swipe and stroke. Through the eyes of canvas, we are equal. Canvas has no such sense of right and wrong. Before continuing, I ought to tell you my name. I am Paper, a close friend of Canvas, whose real name is Josephine. Anna is just talking for us since we do not have vocal cords. Instead, I, Paper, talk through my own words, which I allow people to give me. Canvas talks through paintings and drawings which people gift them. Have you ever had a writing block, perhaps an art block? That is because of us. If we do not like what you have to offer us, then we will give you time to collect your thoughts and figure it out. Some hate us for that, some think it is a headache, but it is important. Don't think Picasso started busting out masterpieces at the age of 2 months and 3 days. Canvas will argue otherwise, but once more, they see everything equal. Everything is the same swipe and stroke to Canvas. I could talk all day about this, but I hear Anna has a limit and mustn't wait too much time on unimportant details. Just remember that whether it is love or hate, magenta or turquoise, rose or honey, war or blood, it is all the same swipe and stroke through the eyes of the canvas. All right, I'll now be handing the mic back over to Antonia.
Anna and I are going to read alternate poems. I will read a poem first, and then Anna is going to read the poem that she wrote based on the theme that was in my poem. It gave her an idea to write a poem, and so she wrote a poem, as it were, parallel or growing out of the ideas of my poem. Here's the first one. Knitting circle. See them in the sunlight, knitting together the world's fabric, making it anew. See how the white cloths on the round tables are many bright moons, the spread of colored yarns, the northern lights, unnamed constellations. Friends, neighbors, meeting together to mend the warm, create the new, stitch by stitch, age-old work. In the shadowy corners, don't the grandmothers murmur encouragement?
This one, I was thinking of ideas that I like to do with my friends, and I always end up cooking or baking with them, so this is what that is about. See them under the stained glass light, baking together, my grandma's recipe, making it anew. See how the earthenware in the hot oven hugs many round cakes, the sweep of bright icing, the edible rocks, forming ancient circles. Family, friends, aroma forming one, to stir the recipe, create our own. Whisk by whisk, age-old ingredients, looking to the dark door, my late relatives whisper relief.
Moon, autumn evening. My neighbor's tall maple lifts a fistful of fire. My sweet gum and his tulip tree glow ember-like. The new moon, just a sliver, goes down against pale blue and yellow sky. So calmly, so beautifully, my heart feels an ache of pain. The trees become dark shapes against the sky. For one instant, the moon is there. Then I'm left alone in the empty street. Only the fragrance of leaves in the air.
I use my neighbor as a reference for this, just to clear that up before I begin. Sun, spring morning. My neighbor's tall pine, lowering a hand of green. My Japanese maple, her large towering tulip tree, bright and star-like, The old sun, a bursting ball, rises up, in contrast to a sky laden with pink fading to orange, so breathtaking, so enchanting. My heart skips a beat. The meadow becomes light and airy against the azure, and for one moment the sun is taken. After, I'm left in the full field, only the chirp of crickets in my ears.
How soon the dusk comes. These last grey weeks of fall, and the sun struggling to shine through the low-lying clouds now spreading across the sky, sink lower as the day moves towards night into the country of dusk. Then the birds, the trees, become still, silent, waiting for that brief moment, unseen yet felt, when dusk crosses over to night and the dark is here.
I just pretty much did the same format and everything, but made it exactly the opposite. How soon the dawn comes. These first pale green days of spring, and the clouds struggling to curtain the high flying flame, now spreading across the blue, to rise higher as the day moves towards noon into the land of dawn. Then the lark, the trees become alive, awake, and growing. In that short moment, heard yet unseen, when dawn crosses over to dusk and the light comes.
Wonderful. Thank you, Antonia and Anna. Thank you so much for that. That was really lovely. I mean, very, very nice to hear your own poems and then to hear what you did together. That was just wonderful. Thank you so much for doing that. Okay, so we're going to start our open mic period. And I think, let's see, Beth Lodge Regal, you're going to start us off on the open mic.
Thank you, Patsy. I'm happy to be here. This is called After American Ninja Warrior. I thought to bring my own younger girl self here today. Dreaming obstacles, this is not a game. Long ago on metal jungle gyms, we flung ourselves hand over hand, crossed the moat of shredded tires. 8 feet up, we left the skin of our palms behind to catch a cargo net, grab a ring, keep going. Witch's hat, warped wall, the whole damned playground, a spider walk dodge of thick rubber balls, unstable bridges, burning ropes. We were backyard warriors, crazy with steel grip finger strength, tracers, our fancy footwork balance honed on wobble boards, teeter-totters. We were tomboy terrors. We swung from our knees, flipped, and kept running, not so much winning as hitting a mark without falling, leaping the puddle, beating the bell. And I'm going to pass it along now to April Ridge. I'm looking forward to hearing you, April.
Thank you. So this one is it's called Punxsutawney Phil Better Check Again. A heavy spring rain at the beginning of February. It is raining so hard the air is all muddied up. I cannot see the road in front of me properly. That middle line is wavering. The yellowed grass, the brown stemmy brush of last year's wildflowers look ready to push forward at any given chance. Just 1 week of proper heat and old Jack Frost dust will be shaken from our musty area rugs. The boots of winter stored behind flip-flops next to the basket of sundry warm gear stowed away to wait for next year. And then I forgot to say this has a second part to it. So part 2. Your calculations are off, sun delirious groundhog. Perhaps your translator misinterpreted your stroll back to your winter-proofed joy hole. As you turned your back, you softly cackled to your woodland pals. These idiot humans fall for it every year. And thank you. And next is Rebecca Spivey.
Thank you, April. This first poem is called Downfall. The castle's corbelled lions were witness to her final downfall after she lost her grip on the crumbling crenellation. Her first downfall at the hands of the laird, chattel for his pleasure, at his leisure. But who pushed her over the edge? Perhaps the laird, perhaps his lady, her precious cargo tucked inside, never to be a part of this world. Who saw the end of her as she lay crumpled on the virgin snow? Her bright green cloak splayed around her, her yellow hair haloing her face, like a lone daffodil in the first spring snow. And I happily pass the mic to Joan.
So I usually write sort of long narrative poems, but for this open mic, I was experimenting with doing some small snapshots. So this first one is called Last Wednesday. Half stepped down from the parking lot, wasn't looking, heel caught, fell in front of the grocery store. All sprawled out, glasses and phone tumbling from my purse, and the thank you, I'm okay, really, I'm fine. Just a skinned knee like some reckless 8-year-old. This morning, my friend called. His daughter has gone missing somewhere in Santa Cruz. And tonight, my son leaves a message, another death in the family. From Sweden, Jenny sends a postcard that I prop up on my desk. Yoko, dressed in black, leaning against a lamppost. New York behind her, a gray blur. And over her head, a yellow traffic sign says, "Don't walk." So I am now happy to pass the microphone over to Kendall Lott.
Thank you, Joan. This poem is called Old Fishing Pole. Picked up these days only once in a while after being hauled around from place to place for over 60 years. You stand about 4.5 feet, about the width of the smile in my heart. Slightly bent over your amber bamboo like an old man who's lost his flex. Cracks run through your length like gnarly nodes. Pronounced arthritic joints, an old man's residue. Found along a little creek among brambles and briars, perhaps some might say you were cut off before reaching your prime. Before who knows how tall you might have become, almost 10 feet, certainly 8. But you were there and there you were plucked, perhaps found your life's work in a sun-filled summer day at a little creek by this 12-year-old hoping for luck. And then became a delightful friend and component of pleasure, if even now confined to the addict, a cherished treasure for a dear old man wherever he went. What makes one tote the likes of you around from city to city and state to state, other than the need to remember who he was before he went wading through brambles and briars, trying to find his ground? And now, pass it right along to Doris.
Thank you, Ken. Sound patina. The dead listen more than the living. Camouflaged in dry corn stalks, they stand attentive as corpse soldiers. At night's hem, the disappeared respond to willow sway as fog scent rises from the belly of Black Bottom Creek. The missing tune out frog bellows and the shrieks of night birds. In the mix of sounds they chance upon lovers' sighs, the laughter of children. By sea's border, the unborn hide beneath bleached logs. They wait, they hesitate, biding this time before time, beyond a canto of waves, leaps toward sky. And I'm happy to pass the mic along to Patsy Ron.
Okay, thank you, Doris. That was really lovely. Okay, this first poem is called The Implosion of the American Way. We are wound up tighter than an old spring clock, imploding, exploding, explanations from the right, from the left, from the far-flung fringes, colliding in a collective kaleidoscope, scooping up the worst in our natures, hoarding the worst as if it were gold. The American eagle soars and sees. It screes, swoops low, picking up the Constitution. It flies away, a spark in the sky, to its Olympian nest, to feed the Constitution to its children. Okay, so we're going to start our second round, and it goes back to Beth.
This poem is called Green. Somewhere in time, my mother played Bach on a second-hand upright piano, painted green. Nap times, I listened through closed doors. Her records spun low in other rooms, pale green. The woven rug a circle, and my belly scratched. I traced spiral patterns, red, blue, green, round and round in repeating finger steps, and my little fractal mind greening. On a path, coming, going, returning to the same spot, a different shade of green. Still the same wreathed world in thickening dimensions, looping garlands green, the color of rest, revival, leaves, peas, verdant, viridescent, evergreen. Her fingertip patterns, her classical records, her affinity for green. Dream echoes rise, then fall, then rise again. Come back, they say. Go on, but come back, re-greened. Thank you, and I'll pass it on to April.
Thank you, Beth. So this one is called Our True Selves. We all have it within us to destroy or to build, to wish for redemption or revenge. Goals, they can be a deterrent, like some strange form of stage fright. They can be a current, pushing your face toward the only source of light. The ultimate peer pressure, the most damaging way to enlighten someone is to encourage their faults, to urge them to self-destructive behavior. Self-harm reduction can be performed simply by avoiding those who bring us negative energy or no energy at all, who are only present when the chips are down so that they can compare and contrast your unique sadnesses. We all have that power within to withstand the tidal winds. We should know the consequences of showing vulnerability. Our true selves is sometimes the only emotion that produces a hand that wins. Thanks. And next is Rebecca. I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, April. This poem is called The Serpent Hides, an homage to Returning We Hear the Lark by Isaac Rosenberg. The serpent hides in dangerous tides, biding its time with millennial patience. Its hunger, never quite sated, voraciously wanting more. It slithers close to shore, sensing its victims' unguarded underbellies, fat and ripe for the taking. But the serpent didn't count on the dark-haired woman with the almond eyes who sang songs of warning. Those who listened were saved. For those who didn't, the serpent lurked, watched, ready to strike. Some of us hear the lark. Some of us hear the serpent. And with that, I happily pass the mic to Joan Hawkins.
Thank you, Rebecca. This is a short piece called My Mother's Face. I am growing into my mother's face. Happened gradually. That first morning, a sudden turn, a tilt of the jaw, and there she was, someone else looking back at me. Loved and not loved, trusted and feared, someone I didn't really know. This will take some getting used to. And with that, I'm happy to pass it on to Kendall.
Thank you, Joan. This poem is going to be in the form of a haibun, which of course is a verse followed by hopefully a haiku that resonates with the haibun verse. It's called Distances. 1946. I'm 5 years old. In the middle of the night, Mom arouses my 6-year-old brother and me from sleep, stands us wobbling on our shared bed with, "Let's go meet Daddy. He's coming home after almost 2 years in the US Navy and service in the South Pacific." Piercing the night, a waving headlight growing larger makes us boys jump up and down and run in circles. At last, the screech of metal on metal accompanied by sparks. A swishing sound from the train like exhaling. We wait and wait. Finally, far down the tracks in the darkness, a white sailor hat bobbing up and down. Mom heads toward him as fast as she can in her high heels. We trot behind. They slam into each other and hug forever and forever. I can't wait my turn. Did I get a hug? Found in the attic, a World War II Navy uniform, odor of grief. Passing the mic now over to Doris.
Thank you, Ken. That was wonderful haibun, one of my favorite forms as well. I've been reading biography, so this is a literary biography poem. Emily and the Great Dog. A young woman swings a lantern through the Amherst autumn. Her brother Austin, her sister Vinnie, both away at school, have left the poet lonely. For protection, Mr. Dickinson said, handing Emily a leash to a dog with hair almost the color of her own. Little did lawyer Dickinson know that he'd just given his middle child the gift of freedom, a companion that gave Emily license to roam through the graveyard, across the college campus, along the tracks of the railroad he had brought to town. Like Byron before her, Emily had her own Newfoundland, a huge beast who would never tire of her voice chanting out words in sunshine, fog, and snow. Emily stared into Carlo's eyes and found serenity there. He made her forget about Vesuvius erupting and the local Massachusetts boys lost to the Civil War. Each morning, this dog followed Emily from kitchen to conservatory to walking path. Together they'd race and catch a glimpse of the Boston-bound train. Carlo's pillow, whirls of russet hair, scrap of poem. And next is Patsy Ron.
Okay, thanks, Doris. This next poem is called Open Wound. We appear to have never gotten over the Civil War, creating a nation of two minds, one not willing to let go of its slaves, the other wishing there had never been slaves, but not able to clean the wound, heal the damage, embrace those once enslaved, love them, marry them, rejoice with them, never again see them, but as us. We are the us of America. And starting the third round, it's Beth.
Thank you, Patsy. I wrote this poem when I was reading a novel called The Department of Speculation by Jenny Offel. And there's a small epigraph here. Edison explains his phonograph. Your words are preserved in tin foil and will come back upon the application of the instrument years after you are dead, centuries after you have crumbled into dust. Calling Edison. Because yesterday the lights went out in the storm, batteries run down on every contraption we fancy to keep us current, and a paucity of candles, oil lamps sold at the garage sale years ago after we lived through Y2K, and ourselves with naught but a match and the gas burner lit for coffee. At least that. And the sun coming up on another uncertain morning, glorious, glistening green. There's that. And your voice uttering your words, recalling your tinfoil laughter before sleep. Can we capture this in the absence of any workable equipment, in our insular half-acre world, in this time and place? Like other times and places in the story of humankind, when the air was electric with a possible future, a probable disaster, and the sound of singing from windowsills, kisses and coughs, thunder in the distance, the wind in the trees. Thank you. And I'll pass it on to April.
Thank you, Beth. So this poem is from a workshop class I've been doing. We did an exercise that they presented Robert Hayden's poem, Those Winter Sundays. So we were assigned to write in that style. So this is called Peace for Breakfast. He rises just a bit earlier than me, wading through the black morning air. His phone, a shield of light to face the day before the coffee is made. His hands softly pour his first cup as my 10-minute snooze alarm goes off and I get up. He rushes, puts the dishes away, clearing the counter, putting my kettle on as I splash an assault of cold water on aching, barely awake face. I squeak down carpeted stairs as he sweeps the frigid floor, moving aside as I get a fresh pour. All of these chores he has saved me from facing each day, my domestic savior. He does these thankless things so that I may have peace for breakfast, a silent moment among the cats and he and I. Does he grasp these tasks as much a tribute as I, or simply a necessity someone must do with a heavy-lidded sigh? I show my thanks in the night with the sharing of the reading light. Thank you. And next is Rebecca Spivey.
Thank you, April. And thank you all. I'm so grateful to be invited to share today and to hear all your words. This last poem is called Peace Between the Notes. Today I go looking, not for peace, but for answers about peace. Where do I find peace in grief? Is it in the moments of busy work when I distract myself? No. Grief will tap me on the shoulder while I'm reorganizing already organized cabinets. It will sneak up on me when I hear a certain laugh or come upon a forgotten moment in time in the form of a photograph or an inside joke that no one else would laugh at. Avoiding grief only prolongs it. I want to make peace with grief. And in my search for comfort in stillness, I recall the face of Yo-Yo Ma as he draws the final notes of Dona Nobis Pacem from his cello. It is a look of ecstasy, otherworldliness, of playing out your own score in the universe. And I know peace in that liminal space between the notes where I can grieve, remember, and smile. And I pass the mic to Joan Hawkins.
Thank you, Rebecca. That was lovely. And I too would like to thank everybody. This has been wonderful, wonderful to share work with people. And thank you, Patsy and Antonia, for inviting me. So this poem, many years ago, my son's best friend, we lost my son's best friend to drugs. I mean, he's still alive, but he just hasn't been able to get off of them. And I recently had a conversation with my son where his name came up, this friend's name came up, and my son said that he was still struggling. And so this is a poem I wrote about the last time I saw this kid. The last time I saw CK, he was on the nod, sitting in a broken bottle nest in the alley behind the French bakery. Pigeons and gulls all around, pecking at crumbs, tugging his coat, shitting his hair. He was absolutely still. Punk St. Francis. The outline of who he had once been still visible, barely. The cut of the jaw, the long, fine hands, so tall, so talented, so can you believe it, handsome, that once he had been cast in every student film, every show. Now, not so, what is the word? Promising. Nose broken and badly mended, mouth so tear-twisted, hard to imagine a smile. He was my son's age. He was once my son's friend. Taking from my bag a half pack of cigarettes, a book of matches, a bottle of juice, an apple, I left an offering, tucked $2 in his pocket, and walked away. I did not leave a note or a phone number. My life was already too complicated. And so I'd like to pass the microphone on to Kendall Lott.
Thank you, John. Very moving poem. Well, we're in the season in which this might occur, so I thought I'd write a poem about tornadoes. This is called Tornado Watch. By 10 p.m., their bodies lay like two wrung-out dishcloths left on the kitchen counter to dry overnight. Tonight until 3 a.m., they lay under a tornado watch, which was unusual at this season. No sirens, just an alert for further developments. They stayed awake for a while, then dozed off. Sometime between around 3, he was roused by lightning, rambling thunder, wind like heavy breathing, alternately inhaling, sucking the atmosphere right out of the trembling house, and exhaling like threatening to blow it apart. Raindrops were soon sounding like a waterfall pouring off the roof. Were these Mother Nature's tears grieving over opportunities missed, or for the joy of satiation? Oh, but this was not Mother Nature. This was the hungry teenage son on the loose. Voracious, abandoning the thoughts of proper diet or dining, slow cooked or microwaved was fine, hoping to satisfy that enormous appetite with a pulsating funnel dipping, skipping, bouncing across the land until energy was spent and there was nothing left. From his twilight state, an arthritic hand found its way across the cotton sheet, his fingers slipping gently between hers. Lying there, he wondered. He wondered. A little past 3 o'clock, the storm cell has moved on for now. And now I'd like to pass the mic on to Doris.
Thanks, Ken. And I want to thank everyone too for all the wide variety of ages and words and subjects. And I'm going to end with 3 tiny poems, otherwise known as haiku. New moon, feeling the space between us. Silver hair on the dog's back. Ice moon. Solstice night, our frosted breath mingles with stars. And I'm going to pass the mic on to Patsy Ron, who's been our organizer, and thank you so much.
Thanks for the reminder to turn my mic on. Okay, I'm going to end from the first poem that's actually in my book, The Grainy Wet Soul. It's called In the Dark. Sometimes in the dark, it is tempting to have a fantasy, to remove myself from the life I live, the reality I stand in, the anxieties living in me, the hopes living in me, to walk into a world where I feel only what I wish to feel, to have the impossible moment with someone I know but never dare to encounter in such a manner, or to have the impossible moment with a total stranger, a figment of my imagination, a figure of mosaic composites of all the moments that were good, a sort of nirvana of loving and being loved, a place of hope where the unknown is inviting and not bombing, a place where there is endless possibility, where fulfillment is common and graciousness adorns each encounter, because the heart is the ruler and swings with the mind in rhythmic pulses, synchronized and full of joy. Music, music everywhere, and not a musician in sight. It is our blood pulsing and our breathing beating the drum of the universe. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, everyone, so much for coming and being here. Thank you, Antonia, Matthew, and thank you, Anna Petro, for your wonderful readings. And thank you, everybody, for being part of the open mic. So, and I also want to thank Pat Petro for being our wonderful sound engineer and our future editor for this event. So thank you, everybody. Keep well.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.